Ooh, welcome back to Up in the Blue Seats, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post. I am Jake Brown alongside Rangers beat writer at the Post, Mollie Walker. Our Hall of Famer Larry Brooks will join us in just a few minutes. The regular season has come to an end, Mollie. Finally, I feel like sometimes it could drag on. We already knew the results. This time we had to wait till the final night to confirm that we would get the matchup we all hoped for, Rangers Devils. The Battle of the Hudson. It's on the seventh time these two take on each other in the playoffs. All six came in the Marty Brodeur era. This is the first one in the Igor Shesterkin era here, as we look forward to a matchup where the Devils kind of, in some ways, dominated 3 out of 4, but all close games 2-1, 4-3 in a shootout, 4-3 in overtime, and 5-3. So the Devils got the best of the Rangers, but all were tight, and we expect the same. Let's first put the bow on the season, Mollie, before we look ahead to this matchup. 7 Rangers played all 82 games. Some of these guys are probably gassed. They might have to be ready for another 28, maybe a full 110 for some of these guys, which is insane when you think about playing 110 hockey games in a year. But they're coming in with a couple of days off. They'll play game 1 Tuesday, so they'll get a little rest here. But because of the cap, and you wrote about it, Larry wrote about it, they couldn't really afford to call up guys and have other players play just for cap situations. So, kind of put a bow on this regular season for us. What'd you think of the end? And obviously the Rangers lose Thursday, but it didn't really matter. But put a bow on the regular season for us, Mollie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it got off to a slower start than anybody expected, including the Rangers. But I think that just goes back to everybody just kind of having their blinders on. I mean, it's difficult for a team to admit, but I feel like it's such a common circumstance to come off a long playoff run like the Rangers did and then just be dropped in game 1 of 82 and looking at it as such a uphill battle. I mean, who can blame anybody for it's like such a daunting situation. So I feel like they were able to turn it around. Everybody likes to cite that infamous Jacob Trouba game, throwing the helmet, telling the bench to wake the F up. It definitely was nothing short of entertaining, but the Rangers got back to where they needed to. They took care of business when they needed to. They had a really hot streak in the middle of the season to get to where they are now. So I think that they were able to do what they had to do. And now that they're here, I expect a different level to be unlocked, especially with the additions of Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. I mean, if we're going to look back on this lineup and think that this was probably one of the Rangers' best chances to win the Stanley Cup on paper, of course.
Was the turning point that Monday versus the Blues? I always look back to that in December where, Gallant's on the hot seat. They lose a few more. Maybe he gets canned. Or was it when they got Tarasenko and that was like, all right, we're all in? Or was it when they got Kane? Do you look at one of those as the kind of turning point of this year?
No, I think you're right about the Blues game. I think that after Trouba's, I guess, reaction on the ice, kind of snapped the Rangers out of it a little bit, and they still were having some struggles in the few games after that Chicago game, but it was pretty shortly after that they started playing to their strengths and to an identity. It kind of felt like they lost their identity a little bit in the beginning of the season, but that turned around right around that Blues game, like you said. So if I had to say a turning point, it was definitely that stretch there, because they went on an absolute tear after that. And it was because of that stretch that they were able to, power themselves back into the front of the Metropolitan Division, which was and ended up being so crucial for them just because of how the division unfolded in general this season. It was super tight, super, no room for error. So that was a crucial part of the season for the Rangers. Absolutely.
Do you have a grade? Give us your Rangers,
Mm-hmm.
regular season report card grade. They finished just a few points worse than last year, 110 last year, 107 this year, 52 wins last year, 47 this year. So a bit of a drop off, but a similar playoff position. What's Professor Walker give the Rangers this year?
I feel like if the Rangers were an A last season, which I say confidently, probably an A minus this season, just a bit of the slow start and clearly looking ahead when they probably shouldn't have been. But again, they're only human, that's just going to come with the territory, I feel, but probably an A minus. Also just because of even after they got Kane and Tarasenko, it felt like it did take them a little while to get acclimated and to start playing more of a team game again. But I am pretty confident that they have figured that out and have worked out all the kinks going into this playoff series with the Devils. So I would probably give their season this year an A-.
I'll agree with an A-. I didn't see too many A-minuses when college came around, but I was more of a C+ student. But the Rangers were far better than a C+. All right, let's give out our A+. Let's give out our Rangers team MVP for the season. Who is it?
Mika Zibanejad. I mean, we voted on it as the Rangers PHWA chapter, but I feel like Mika really, I mean, he's been coming into his own. I feel like that's such a phrase that we throw around for young guys, but he really was at the top of his game at a very consistent pace this entire season. Just consistent production, consistent performances on the defensive side of the puck as well. I feel like we always talk about how underrated that part of his game is. And he really has just been, Igor was probably the backbone of the Rangers last season. I'd go as far to say Mika Zibanejad was the backbone of the Rangers this season, just in terms of his consistency, bringing the same thing each and every night, and being a guy that the rest of the team can look after as a role model of how they want to be playing. So easy answer for Mika Zibanejad as the team MVP this season.
Can't deny that. 39 goals, 91 points, not too shabby. All right, who's the Rangers' most improved player this year?
This is kind of a tough one. I think I want to say Capo Caco, especially if we're taking into consideration where he ended last season, which was in the press box during Game 6, watching the Rangers. So I think that it was a pretty nice turnaround for him this season. You got Filipinos right there. Filipinos' ascension just kept going straight up from the playoffs. But I feel like in terms of all-around game and all-around noticeability on the ice, I feel like Capo Caco really was much more positively noticeable this season than any other of his seasons in New York. So I would probably go with Capo Caco, but obviously Heedle's right there. Even Alexis Lafreniere is right there. They all took some strides this season.
Was there a Ranger that you would give a D or F that had like a bad year who you thought could have stepped up this season?
I don't really think anybody had a bad year. I mean, I know Trouba and Miller had their moments as a pair, but that's going to come with playing the competition that they do and drawing the matchups that they do. If you think about the kinds of players that they're up against on a nightly basis, that's just going to come with the territory, I feel. But it's really difficult to say. You can't really say that anybody had a bad year. Again, you could also go to Igor Shesterkin not being his otherworldly self, but that's also something that's just going to happen after having a historic run last season. So a bit of a drop off was kind of expected, but it's hard to look at this lineup and say anybody had a bad year.
Yeah. And, as Larry wrote too, Igor's been a little pedestrian, which pedestrian for him is still good.
Yeah.
But do you think he steps it up here going to this Devil series, going to the playoffs? He was great in the playoffs last year. He has to, I feel like, or, this Rangers team will ride or die with him.
Absolutely. And I think that what Igor went through last playoffs will serve him greatly this time around, going into Pittsburgh and getting tormented the way that he did, and him admitting that it did have a bit of an impact on him. I think he's ready for that now this time around. I think that he knows it's coming, is expecting it, and that'll be something that'll really help him settle into the playoffs.
Well, it'll help him settle too that in New Jersey there's going to be a ton of Rangers fans, so there's not going to be any Igor heckling going on in his own basically home arena part 2.
That is very true. That is absolutely very true. That's probably a unique layer to this entire series, is that both arenas are going to be filled with both fans. It's going to be lots of blue, lots of red. So I think that that's definitely another layer to it. But yeah, I definitely expect Igor to stay at the level that he's been at in recent games for the playoffs, because I just know the expectations that he holds himself to and the standards and all that jazz. So I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance these first 2 rounds, I know it's your heaven, that it's local and local 2 times in a row, which means 2 months in your own bed, a little Long Island Railroad action, a little
Woohoo!
New Jersey Transit action, a little Larry Brooks carpool karaoke action. So
Yep.
it could be a lot of locals. So I know Rangers writers for Islanders is coming when they go up against the Hurricanes, which, there are a lot of experts who are picking the Islanders. They think they match up well with them. So
Hey,
you might be one of them.
I am also picking the Islanders. I am, and not just because I'm manifesting a series on Long Island, as great as that would be, but I think that the Hurricanes showed that they're vulnerable in this last stretch of the season. They were not spectacular. They do not look like they're at the top of their game like a lot of the other teams in the East right now coming into the playoffs. So I think that of all the playoff series in the East, the Hurricanes are probably at the most risk of getting upset by the Islanders, because as we've seen in the past, once the Islanders get into the playoffs, man, they're built for it. They are built for the grind. Injury wise, they're ready for it. And after the debacle of last season, I think that they're even more motivated this time around in the playoffs.
All right, you're picking the Islanders. So
I
before
am.
Larry comes on, are you picking the Rangers? Give us your series breakdown and prediction before Larry jumps on.
I am. I think it's Rangers in 6 or 7. I do. I wrote about it today that I don't think that the Rangers' edge and playoff experience will necessarily mean anything unless they play to it, unless they act like the more seasoned team out there. And I think that'll be a huge thing for them, to kind of squander the exuberance that is this young Devils team, which they did add some playoff experience over their actions this season and going into this season. But I do think that the Rangers are just have a more seasoned group, and it should mean something. They should be able to play to that. So I am going Rangers in 6 or 7, but
Let's
I think it'll be a
go.
really good series. I think it'll really come down to the wire, and like I said, a lot of high scoring affairs. I am anticipating there's going to be a lot of open ice there.
I expect a few potential double overtime games and some
Mm-hmm.
long nights for you ahead. And of course, they're probably going to come on the eve of a podcast. I guarantee game 2 goes like 7 overtimes. And at 4 a.m. we're recording and you're still on the Jersey Turnpike. So I'm going to take Rangers in 7 as well. I think they close it out on the road, and you have Devils fans pumping Rangers fans gas on the way home in celebration of a win. All right, Larry Brooks will join us next to break down this series and make his pick on Up in the Blue Seats. Up in the Blue Seats, Jake Brown and Mollie Walker with the great Larry Brooks, NYP_Brooksy on Twitter. Larry, we got what we wanted. Easy passes paid for. You're making the trip to Newark for 2. How excited are you for the series? The first Martin Brodeur-less Rangers-Devils playoff matchup.
Yeah, I'm look, this is something I think we've been anticipating for weeks, maybe even months. These Rangers, Islanders are special. And when you get one of these in the postseason, haven't had one for a while, it's something to savor. I think it's going to be exciting hockey. I think it's going to be a terrific series. I think it's going to be a real competitive series. There are big time players on both sides, marquee players on both sides. They play an exciting style. Both teams do. Honestly, it should just be a terrific best of 7.
And you've seen 5 of the last 6 times that they've squared off in the playoffs. So, I mean, just what kind of moments stand out to you? What were some of your favorite storylines of each of those playoff series? Just what's your Mount Rushmore of Rangers Devils playoff moments that you've covered?
Well, you start with Howie Rose.
Yeah. Our guy.
Look, the 94 conference finals may have been the best of 7 in NHL history. It's right up. The 71 Chicago Montreal final was a great series. The Blackhawks and Kings played a conference final in either 14 or 15, I think 14. That was right there. But the drama of the the Will Win Tonight series, followed by Matteau. It was and I have said I've written this now for 29 years. It was an epochal series. Everything, we had Mike Keenan flipping out, benching Brian Leach in the middle of the series, the Devils taking the 3-2 lead, the Devils going up 2-0 in Game 6 when Messier had guaranteed it. Mike Richter's heroics. Yeah, honestly, you could talk.
Yeah.
I could go on and on and on because
Please do. We can listen to you go on and on about it.
Stephane Richer scoring to win Game 1 in overtime. And then you just had Matteau scoring another overtime goal earlier in the series. It was just a great series, a lot of drama. The Rangers, of course, with Mike Keenan, had gone all in for that season. Had they lost that series, there would have been an upheaval at the Garden. And who knows how Mark Messier would have been remembered, honestly. You guarantee victory, you better win.
Yeah, right.
and they did, and with him getting a hat trick in the third period. But and then Game 7, 2 nights later, where you expect the Devils to be demoralized, it was as well a played high stakes game as I've ever seen. It was 1-1. Devils tied it with 7.7 seconds remaining. And what was so interesting about that is how on point they were, how Lemaire just kept rolling his lines in the third period. They're down 1-0 and they're facing elimination, and here came the fourth line, here came the crash line, here came the third line. I mean, they just rolled it and rolled it and rolled it, and they tied it with 7.7 seconds remaining. So that's that's a Mount Rushmore all in itself. 2012, it's over. Here were the Rangers marching on their way to the Stanley Cup final, and here were the Devils and Brodeur, 18 years after suffering the gut punch in 1994. Here is Brodeur. I think he was 39 then, beating Henrik Lundqvist at his peak. Beating Vezina-winning Henrik Lundqvist and the Rangers. The Rangers had played 2 7-game series before that, and contrary to John Tortorella's proclamations, they were tired. Mattered that it took them 14 games to get to the Devils, and I think New Jersey had a 6 and a 5 or a 6 and a 6. I think 6 and a 5 actually. So they were rested. The Rangers had started cutting their bench down in basically in Game 1 of the first round. So they were a tough team, but they took a 2-1 lead in the series, and it seemed things were under control. But once the Devils won the fourth game, they Game 5 at the Garden, it was a cacophony, and the Devils wound up winning it on a goal by fourth liner Ryan Carter late in the third period to break a tie. And then, of course, Game 6. Game 6 was so eerily similar to the Game 6 in 94, where the Rangers had taken a 2-0 lead, or the Devils had taken a 2-0 lead, and the Rangers came back. And in this game too, it was 2-0 comeback. This time the Rangers came back, and there was just shock in the Rangers locker room when it was over. So those are the two. The 06 one, it was Lundqvist's rookie season, a spectacular season for the Rangers. They had been projected as a lottery team, and then Jágr had an all-time season. Jágr and Hank's rookie season, but Jágr just carried the team, and it's actually with the 1978-79 team. That's probably my favorite Ranger team to cover. There was so much personality, so much charisma. Being around Jágr that year was a treat.
Yeah, sure.
Getting to know Jágr and talk. I mean, the number, the thousands of questions and the thousands of conversations we had, and but they were in first place almost all year, and then And then they just ran out of gas. Lundqvist was hurt. He had, I think, a lower body issue or a core issue, but I think even more damaging was he was going through migraines, and so they got swept. You got in the first game. They gave up, I believe, I think they gave up 5 power play goals, 5 or 6 Devils. So I mean, this was a big time Devils team,
Yeah.
And they had everybody except for Scott Stevens, which is a major person to be without. But they had all their guys, and Patrick Elias was at his peak, and so the game one is a blowout. It's Hank's first playoff game, and toward the end of the game, for whatever reason, Yager took a punch at Scott Gomez. I mean, he just threw a right hand at Scott Gomez for whatever reason, maybe portending their relationship later on when they were teammates. And he suffered either a separated shoulder, and he played a couple of more games in the series, but he was done. Lundqvist was benched for game 2. He didn't play game 2. Kevin Weeks played. And the Rangers just were swept. They were out of their element by that point. But it didn't. It was one of those series where one of those outcomes where it didn't sully at all the regular season. It was just such a good regular season. It was the first time the Rangers had been in the playoffs since 1997. So the first round sweep was just a first round sweep, and it really served as a building block. 97 was interesting. Because that was the year the Rangers had Messier and Gretzky. And I'm telling you, those two guys not only intimidated the Devils, who had finished in first place, but intimidated the officials. And that was one of the years that, it was the foot in the crease, the skate in the crease thing.
Yeah.
And anytime there was a questionable call, now remember, there was no, was there replay? I guess there was. But anytime there was a questionable call, either Gretz or Messier would jump over the boards, skate to the ref, and it was like waved off.
Yeah.
It was honestly there, and New Jersey again. They had their team. They won the first game. The Devils won the first game at the Meadowlands, and this was another example of Mike Richter's value. He elevated his game in the big moments. He did it for the Rangers. He did it for Team USA. But in that series, the Devils were dominating the Rangers in game 2 at the Meadowlands. They couldn't score. And here comes Mark Messier going upside Doug Gilmour's head right in front of the Devils bench, which totally turned. I think, maybe the shots at that point were, 27-4. I mean, it was ridiculous. After that, the game switched. The Devils did not respond. It was right in front of their bench. I mean, just Messier sending a message. I'm still Mark Messier. You're not.
Yeah.
And the series just spun out of control.
Yeah.
For the Devils after that. They never could get back into it. And again, every time it looked like they would, here came Gretz hopping over the boards, and the Rangers won that series in 5. They won it on Adam Graves scored an overtime goal, a little wraparound. It was interesting because later on, I think it was before the 08 series, maybe. Or maybe it was before I guess it was 08 or maybe it was 06. Tom Rennie, when he was Ranger coach, talked about how Brodeur maybe was a little bit vulnerable in plays tight around the net, and going back to Matteau, where I think it actually went in off of Slava Fetisov. So and then the Graves goal was a little wraparound. So, but that was not. Marty was not very vulnerable. That was 97. That was 06, 08. The Rangers won their first. That was the year they played 8 times in the division.
Yeah.
The Rangers won the first 7. They went into the Meadowlands on the final, or it was at Prudential Center. It was the first year at Prudential Center. So they go into Prudential Center in the final game of the season. If they had won that game, they would have gotten home ice. They were third. The Devils were second. If the Rangers had won that game, they would have had home ice in regulation. So late in the game, it was tied, and the Rangers actually pulled Lundqvist to try and get the win. They didn't. They went into overtime. They lost the game. So the Devils had home ice. It didn't matter. That was the Avery Brodeur series
Debacle.
where Avery, it was the birth of the Avery rule.
Avery rule.
And
iconic.
Fatso and calling him Fatso and Brodeur refusing to shake Avery's hand at the end of the series. But the Rangers won all 3 games in New Jersey. And it was the first year at Prudential Center, and it sounded like Madison Square Garden West, honestly. This will be an interesting. It will be interesting to see what the fan breakdown is in New Jersey during this series, because in that one, honestly, you could have closed your eyes. You would have thought you were at the Garden. It was. Avery had a terrific series. Gomez, now playing for the Rangers, had a really good series, and so did Yager. And the Devils did not play well. The Rangers took them out in 5, and then we got to 12. So those are some of the memories. I really could talk for like
your memory is remarkable. You just remember like every moment.
Neo, you have no idea. Jake, you have no idea what nobody listening to this podcast, I mean, unless you've been reading Larry like for a while, understands how unbelievable Larry's memory is. It's like the craziest thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. It's so impressive.
How you recall each game, like game 2 in 98? I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, and you're
Forget the games. He remembers the way the goals were scored. Yeah, that's like what absolutely blows my mind. It's so I'm like you, Jake. I could not tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday, or even earlier today. I just don't have that kind of memory. It's absurd, but it's what a pleasure it is to listen to. Seriously. But I mean, we've mentioned it on this show a couple times already. First series without Brodeur, first one without Lundqvist in a while. So I mean, no matter what, goaltending is always a major storyline, and on paper, Igor Shesterkin has the edge over Vitek Vanacek. But Vanacek has had a really, really good season in New Jersey. I'm just curious how you see the goalie storyline playing into this series, and I guess how much it'll matter.
Well, it's always a bottom line, right? Always. I think the Rangers should be encouraged by the way Shesterkin has played over the last month. I thought his first, 4 months or so were really pedestrian. It wasn't that he wasn't playing up to last year's level. It was that he was a pretty average goalie. He was giving up a lot of marginal goals. But that he has shut that down, and he has looked as sharp as he's ever been over the last 3-4 weeks. Wherever you go back to the cutoff. So I think that's a large advantage for the Rangers. I respect Vanacek. He's played exceptionally well.
He has.
He doesn't give up very many freebies,
and that's been the Devils' issue for a pretty long time. So the fact that they were able to take care of that.
Yeah, their goaltending really undermined them the last couple of years. It made it very difficult to appreciate the progress they might have been making because their goaltending just wasn't good enough. Their goaltending is good enough now, and this is going to be a series, I think, where there are a lot of scoring chances. So, I think that the Rangers go in with an edge on paper, but the game's played on the ice. I don't expect Shesterkin to give up too much, but it'll be on the Rangers to get to the net, score some dirty goals, take Vanacek's eyes away, because they're not going to beat him from 40 feet.
Right. All right. So then here we'll go into this, and I'll answer first.
Mm-hmm.
Players to watch on both teams, one player on each team. For me, I'm gonna go with Jack Hughes for the Devils. Just can't wait to see that kid on a playoff stage. And this might be a hot take, but I'm gonna go Patrick Kane for the Rangers. I think that it's going to be a different level for Patrick Kane once the playoffs begin. I genuinely think that it was an active decision not to overexert himself this at the end of the regular season here. You know, whatever the severity of his hip issue might be, I think he has been holding back a little bit because he was brought to New York for the playoffs. So I'm going to go with Patrick Kane for the Rangers and Jack Hughes for the Devils. Larry, what say you?
So, am I allowed to, or am I,
You can pick the same players. Yeah, if you pick the same.
Oh, okay.
I'd be honored.
Well, Hughes, of course.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
That's a
I think
no-brainer.
Jack Hughes is the most compelling story here.
I know.
You know, he's I mean, you know, he's really one of my favorite players to watch in the league. It's only a coincidence that my grandson wears 86.
Not impacting that decision at all. No bias here.
And is his idol. When he scores during the season, guys yell out, "Jack Hughes, Jack Hughes."
You better tell Jack Hughes that when you get in there.
But Scott. But look, I you know, he's an electrifying player.
Yeah.
He just is. He's an elite player in his fourth year. I'm interested to see Dawson Mercer.
Yeah.
For the Devils, but my one would be Hughes. Yeah, I mean, Kane is right there. But I'll say that I'm interested to see what Philip Hedl does in this series, because I think in a lot of ways the Rangers' third line could be determinative. I think the kids, I think they have an edge on their third line. The Devils and Rangers, if you want to start, matching up the top six, which I haven't done yet, but it seems pretty equivalent to me.
Yeah.
I think the Devils have more speed, but the Rangers, when they get going, move the puck as well as anybody. And the interesting part of this is that the Devils are the young team and the Rangers are the experienced team.
Yep.
They are. I mean, when they have loaded up on veterans, and except not on D. Their D is young, but up front, other than the kids, there is no forward younger than 28 on this team. So this is an experienced team. Their 3 rounds last year, serves as backdrop for what they do this year. But I do think the top 6 kind of cancel each other out. We'll see which team gains the advantage there. But I really like the Rangers' third line, and so I'm interested to see if Philip Hedl, he took a step in the playoffs last year. He took a step from the playoffs to this regular season. Now, I'm expecting him to take another step, to take a step from the regular season up. And I think too, I think the way Kakko ended this season was really impressive. He won 18 goals, which is not,
I said, I'm curious to hear your take. I said I thought he was the most improved player.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good,
right?
Yeah, it's pretty good insight. Yeah, no, that's not a bad thing. No, it's pretty good. Yeah. Oh, but I'll be watching Hedl to see if he can dominate shifts. Because that line also really is the only one that really grinds.
Yeah,
they do. They get the puck in. They work it. They're dangerous in open ice, but they also, their template. If they don't have an obvious odd man rush opportunity, they'll just dump it in
and grind along the boards.
Right, and when Kakko has it, it's tough to displace him. He's just got to get to the net.
Right.
But I agree with you about being very, very curious about Patrick Kane's game
Me too.
because um, he made really almost no impact during the regular season, almost none. So um, we'll see.
I'd even throw Artemi Panarin's playoff redemption arc into that conversation as well as another player that I'm very excited to see in the playoffs. But on to prediction. I just said I think Rangers in 6 or 7. What's your final word
Yeah,
before we
you
end
know what?
this?
I prefer to, I know I would prefer to defer until I write it because
Fair,
I,
fair.
I,
We are a print first publication.
yeah, I would prefer to defer that because I think it can go either way.
Definitely can.
Um, I think it's important for the Rangers. Listen, I know they obviously fell behind 3-1 to Pittsburgh last year and won. They lost the first two in Carolina, came back and won.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll be able to get away with that.
Tampa lost the first two to the Rangers, came back and won. So, losing the first two on the road does not automatically, spell doom. But I think it's important for the Rangers to put some doubt into the Devils' minds quickly, because this is a team that seems to me just to always be looking like they're having a great time. I think they are just pumped for this. I think the Rangers are a very business-like operation. Not that they don't play with emotion, but to me, they're a veteran, business-like, button-down operation. And from the outside, the Devils look like, they're just an ebullient group. They can't wait to start this. They had a great time during the regular season. Nothing would be better, other than winning the cup, obviously, than knocking off the Rangers. So I think it's important for the Rangers to put some doubt to stop the Devils quickly, before they can gain a lot of momentum and a lot of belief. And I think it's important for the Rangers to win one of the first two.
All right. Well, you'll read the prediction in the New York Post and at nypost.com. Larry, thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you after game 2, after your quick ride home back to New York.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, Molly, I hope everyone's all pumped up now for the series after hearing from you and Larry and hearing our predictions, game 1 and 2. We don't know when game 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are. Maybe they'll release a schedule at some point so people could plan their lives. But until then, we'll live in the first 2, knowing those.
Probably right after we finish recording this podcast, it'll come out.
Death, taxes, and untimely podcast news. It's a tale as old as time here on Up in the Blue Seats. And that closes episode 121 of Up in the Blue Seats, our New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post. Thanks to Andrew Hartz and the intern Josh Crawford for helping me out and producing this show all season. As we look ahead to playoff shows now, you can catch up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. And if you're watching this on the New York Post Sports YouTube, give us that thumbs up button and comment below your prediction on Rangers Devils. Whose wins and how many games will it go? Follow Molly on Twitter at Mollie Walker. That's 2 E's, 2 R's, and follow me at Jake Brown Radio. This is going to be fun, Molly. I'm excited. I know you are again for the quick road trip with Larry. But it's been a fun year. A couple big trades. A lot of ups and downs, a roller coaster ride, but now this is what we all love. Everyone talks about what's the best playoffs. Most people will say hockey because it feels like it's inevitable. This is going 6, this is going 7. There's not going to be maybe any sweeps across the board, and that's what makes, the NHL playoffs so great.
I feel like everybody from fans and even the players have had their sights set on the playoffs since the very beginning of the season. So I feel like we've been working towards this for quite some time. So I'm sure everybody's very excited to just get the ball rolling here.
Well, we will have you covered all playoffs long, however long it goes. We should be dropping an episode after every 2 games. So after game 2, we'll come at you, another rare Friday show. Unfortunate timing, but every 2 games we'll drop a show. And then, of course, if it's after a game 5 series ends, we'll have the show and hopefully looking forward to a second round Ranger playoff matchup. We will talk to you after game 2 next week. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Up in the Blue Seats, and enjoy games 1 and 2.